Hey everybody, I'm back in the kitchen for another little chat. I sent everybody away. I put together the grill. We're getting ready to grill some steak and chicken and whatever veggies I can cut up here. And I thought it was a good opportunity to try to sneak in another little chat. So on the last one, I was talking about how America is having an identity crisis. That we have created this information revolution. It's allowed us to put information out there, but of course information has come back, and it's really challenging our views of who and what America is. Of course, we have some other challenges. Some of them are of our own making. The law of unintended consequences. I think I didn't introduce myself. My name is Kathleen Henry. And, I don't have a fancy degree from Harvard in international relationships or Chicago U in economy. But I spent a long time working in industry that had a lot to do with government contracts and working with the government. And you learn a lot about our government and how even a benevolent system can sometimes be a little bit crushing. I think that's the word. Anyway, so after, so many years in the workforce and dealing with this, I think it gave me a little view of people as well as our economy and our government. And I spend a lot of time reading and listening to other people talk about America and its international relationships. The best thing about the internet information revolution is that we can have information. As Jefferson once said, or Adams, I can't remember which one it was, but Abigail Adams definitely said, if we need to have a well-educated and informed public in order to be the best at self-governance. So I really take that seriously, that we need to be informed. So being informed, being in this information revolution, it's really struck me, not only is the information revolution part of our identity crisis, but we have a lot of challenges that we have in some ways created ourselves. As my grandfather would say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So after the World War II, the United States basically set about organizing the world largely to its own liking and for its own benefit. It had differing levels of success, but largely it's been very successful. It drove the United States economy. We have the biggest economy in the world. We're 25% of the entire global economy, as well as not only at one point its production, but its consumers. And in that matter, we drove the world economy. We created the global economy and what it is today. And as JFK once said, a rising tide lifts all boats. And we literally lifted 1 billion people out of poverty. You can't look at that as some sort of failure. It's one of the greatest achievements of mankind, maybe greater than going to the moon or eradicating polio. But at the same time, that creates some of our challenges, right? So after 1972, Nixon went to China, opened China up for American capitalism, and separating them from Russia and helping us to eventually defeat communism and the USSR. But at the same time, in that law of unintended consequences, we've created mutual assured destruction, economic mad with China. And they're now the number 2 economy. But, everybody knows that China's not exactly a bastion of liberal democracy. And, their view of competition is that they'll steal your stuff and use it for themselves. Pay you? Why should they pay you? You're getting something from them, which is really cheap labor right at this time. But, they have 1 billion people. And as their economic position rises, 1 billion people want things. They want what we have. And now China is expanding in the East, and politically, economically, and attempting to do so militarily and challenging our ability for free trade. They want to control the trade routes, and whoever controls the trade routes, they control the economy. And we got to look at that as a challenge, not just to our position, but to freedom itself around the world. So our other challenges, of course, are Russia. Now, Russia being unhappy about the fall of the USSR. Maybe the USSR wasn't that great, and there were gulags, and they treated people horribly. But in the Russian mind, there's something to be said about the people's great revolution, and that, where is their pride? They're having an identity crisis too, so they're trying to reestablish it. But of course, Russia only has 150 million people. Their economy is smaller than the state of California. And what they have to rely on is oil and natural gas resources. So in their view, they need to, in order to be the next step and not fall any further off of the world scale of world powers, is they need to control the flow of oil and natural gas as well. And that's how they use their proxy Iran in the Middle East to try to gain control of that area. And of course, that leads to another issue altogether. The Iranians are the Russian proxies, and they, of course, foster terrorism. Now, terrorists, if you don't know this phrase, terrorists and terrorism are the proxies of great powers, and terrorism is the manner by which great powers move power and influence under a nuclear umbrella. So in other words, people, while there is this terrible terrorism thing down here, and the internet revolution, the information revolution has allowed them to proliferate the really totalitarian, nasty idea about, that's essentially a very controlling, authoritarian concept of government, that these are not acting alone. They're not acting by themselves. And of course, they're challenging the United States because these other powers want to challenge the United States. So it's useful for them to help these other non-state actors, as we like to call them today. In the Cold War period, though, we called them guerrillas. So, part of our problem today in recognizing that is that we don't necessarily recognize that in a very grand way. The American population sees terrorism as a separate little activity going on, and their idealism as its own separate value system that has nothing to do with all these things going on over here, and therefore must be itself solely defeated. And you really can't defeat that unless you're challenging this other issues up here that are challenging us. Am I talking crazy? Am I confusing you? Okay, terrorists don't exist by themselves. Other people help them. And those are the people challenging us. So, and it's definitely part of the unintended consequences of the internet or information revolution, because we've definitely provided a platform by which those people can proliferate. We've also provided the platform by which states can actually attack us without physically pushing a button, throwing a bomb, or some other activity. They can steal our military ideas. They can steal our money right out of our economic system. They can hack our nuclear systems. So yes, we have created this system that benefits us, but also is an extreme challenge, financially as well as politically and militarily. So at some point, somebody might learn how to hack our satellites. So there are all of these challenges which we created, while at the same time creating the awesomeness that is our economic system. But we see that, and we see China coming up behind us, and the Russians trying to play at us. And that too is challenging us to rethink our position. And in some respects, this is back to the why does America have to be the policeman of the world? I've heard people say that. It wasn't that we were a policeman of the world, and I think that's part of a weird part of the information age that's kind of strange, how people view who or what we were doing. We were organizing things to our benefit that made us number one and allows me to do crazy things like be on this internet and talk to you about what our challenges are. But we don't really view it that way. So a lot of people we're back to the identity crisis. We don't want the information to come in, and in many ways we just want to close the door. We think we could survive without those relationships, without defending our borders. And speaking of that, defending our allies. You know, in the information world, one of the things that's really challenging is discovering that your allies don't always agree with you. Now, the truth of the matter is, they haven't always agreed with us before. We always had just this overarching idea about liberty and freedom and democracy, and that we would defend it. And we had to defend it out here, not just in here. Because if we don't defend it out there, the bad guys come in. So we've always had that overarching idea, but we didn't always agree on how to get it done. And that's been true since when the United States first became an ally with Britain, for instance, in World War I. In the post-World War I period, we created with Britain this issue that we're in right now in the Middle East. That's another discussion. But in any event, so part of our identity crisis is that the very thing that we believe that we are is being challenged by other people. Of course, it's a strange dichotomy that these challenges have actually always existed. So it's not actually new, but even though we have this information age, we sometimes act like it's a new idea. And that somehow it's a new idea that we should close our doors, that it should be just America first and forget everybody. That's not a new idea either. In fact, America first turned out to be historically a very bad idea because it happened one other time. And what we got out of it was World War II. So I just want to talk about our challenges now so that we know, you know, like I said, when you run a company or a large organization and things aren't going quite the way you want them to go, or you're trying to figure out where to go next, your first goal is to do a little analysis of what your threats are. What are your what's your obstacles? What's your strengths and what's your weaknesses? Where are you going? And you need to, of course, look where you've been. And if you're not very good at that, you can make very bad decisions. And in fact, you know, you could stumble along. And it seems that that's kind of where we're at, because the truth of the matter is, when you're so fantastic at doing things, or you at least think you are, it's super hard to look at the fact that maybe not everything you've done or did ended up doing exactly what you wanted to do, or that you need to fix it. We tend to like to not look at it. And that's where we are. So here we are. We're at the crossroads. We're at the American crossroads. What are we doing? Where have we been? How did it turn out? Where are we going? I think that America is not done yet by any means. The greatest experiment on the planet in liberty is not going to end in a puff unless we let it. So part of that is knowing what do we believe in, right? So we see all these challenges. How do you address them? Well, you need a vision. You need an idea of who you are, and it guides you as to how you're going to approach these problems, right? Because obviously, if you're Genghis Khan, then your idea is to smash it and just bring your horde and roll over everything, which was good for Genghis Khan for a little while, but eventually not so good. But we're not Genghis Khan. We believe in something important, not just freedom in some sort of abstract way, but we also believe in justice. We believe that there is such an idea as fairness in the world. But, like I said, it generated like 3 great questions. The 3 great questions that are in fact the problem that challenges our ideas about who we are, that has since the beginning. And what are the 3 great problems? The question of, is it free will? Do I make things happen, or do things happen to me? What is freedom? Are all men created equal? How equal is equal, and define liberty? Last but not least, the 3rd great question, what is justice? Is justice the thing that we make, that we create, that it serves our will, or is justice something separate that has its own power, that when it's done properly, justice is a tool of liberty and equality, as opposed to a tool by which you just apply oppression? So we have these 3 great questions that we have to be able to answer in order for us to face our challenges and figure out the most effective way to manage them. So, just think about that. I'm going to be thinking about that while I'm grilling the steaks. What is it? What are our 3 questions? Why is it so hard for us to answer those questions? Because it is. If it was easy, it wouldn't be freedom, right? So, talk to you guys later.